Hey, what's going on, everybody? I look frozen. Am I frozen to you guys?
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Welcome to the show. Hold on
Uh,
1 second. Do I look right now? Okay.
Yes.
Welcome to the show, everybody. This is what you get sometimes. Today is May 15, 2025. Here's what's going on the show today. We're talking about the future of sales as it applies to AI, but not just the seller. We're also going to be talking about the buyer experience too, because we're moving away from this idea of sales being digital. We've had that for decades now. That's not really big. We're talking about it being AI bringing in that immersive, that predictive, even dare say invisible type of sales. So I've been wanting to do this show for a while. I've been wanting to have this conversation for a while. One, because I do work in the sales industry. I work for a sales consulting company. I think most people know this at that point. So I'm certainly in and around sales all the time. However, as I was just saying to Andy and Beth before we get started, everybody is in sales, and I know that's sort of an old saying or whatever, but you're either on the seller or you're on the buyer side, or you're both, right? We all go to Amazon, we all have things pitched to us through ads and everything else. So we're going to talk about all of that today. We're really going to kind of get into it because it's not even so much about what's happening with AI today, it's where this could go in the future. We're going to talk about AR, we're going to talk about overlays. You could see the graphic for the thumbnail where it says Joe's Crab Shack or whatever it was, and it's like on the glasses. This is the future we're quickly, if not already in. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, look, reset. Today is the Daily AI Show. This is the Daily AI Show. Today is May 15, 2025. Andy, Beth, and I'm Brian. Joining you today. We'll see if anybody else pops in the door. And yeah, like I said, guys, this is something I've been looking to talk about for quite some time. And I know Carl and I have sort of talked about it, and he said, look, there's really some big changes here that are coming. So one of the things that I think we talk about a lot at Scaled is bringing personalization at scale. And what I mean by that is one of our big focuses is obviously not to do, well, not maybe not obviously, we have no intent. I do not build solutions for sales teams to send out 4,000 emails a minute using AI, right? It's not, I mean, certainly possible. We know this is possible. It's already happening, right? We can bulk send. We don't believe at scale that is the way to actually reach prospects and buyers. And so we often talk about personalization. And a lot of the things that I build are around personalization. How can I help a sales rep find and get to a level of personalization that's meaningful for the person they're trying to prospect to? And so there's a lot of solutions built about that. But I think when we go from personalization to maybe this concept in the future of sales to hyper personalization, and it no longer is so much about maybe the rep pushing the buttons and creating that, and it sort of emerges beyond our screen into the world. That's kind of where I get really heady and I get excited about this idea. And maybe it feels a little sci-fi, but we're now seeing, I mean, all three of you guys are wearing glasses. How far away are we from your glasses that you guys are wearing right now that you may use for your typical day-to-day life? Quickly having AI in them, in some sort of heads up display, some sort of knowledge, some sort of like, turn here, Andy, if you're walking down the street, right? But how quickly do we move to something that's like, hey, Andy, I see, you're like, it won't say this, but like, Andy, you live in California, right? So Andy, like, hey, you're in your local town or whatever. I know you frequented this place before. Here's a heads up display ad to you about something that's in proximity, just a few steps away. It's not relevant to anybody else, just Andy. And this is this idea of like data sharing and hyper personalization. So what does that mean from the sales side? And this is where I just want to open it up to you guys on the floor. What does this mean from the sales side? Because we're quickly moving away from salesperson puts together a package to try to reach somebody. And this is maybe B2B, but it doesn't have to be. It could be B2C or B2B2C if you like. But what happens once that that level of personalization no longer matches? And what really is going to start happening is, because of AR, because in the world, said company with thing to sell some widget that I want to sell to you guys, I'm actually going through an AI intermediary almost to make sure that that shows up to you in a hyper-personalized way in the real world, not in your Facebook feed, in the real world. And the other side of this is, how does that affect the buying perspective? Because you also have AI. Andy, you were just kind of joking before we went live, and you said, I'm more interested in the how do I use AI to block the onslaught of sales messages and stuff. And there's certainly a lot of that too. So we have AI on both sides. And where we ultimately think this is going, or I think it's going, I should say, is you're going to start taking more of the humans out of the loop earlier in the process. And so what will ultimately probably happen is you will have said agent on my end, agent on your end. So if I'm selling to Jimmy, by the way, Jimmy joined us. If I'm selling you to you, Jimmy, and I'm the seller, and I've got a widget that I really, really think you would like, let's say your company would like, we'll call it B2B. Well, I want to find and reach you at the time that I think you're going to be have the budget right, you're going to have the approval process, and you actually really need my solution. I'm really actually helping you, not just selling you something. I really feel like as the seller, this widget's going to change your business for the better. But in the future, I think what's really going to happen is you're going to want, as the B2B side of it, you're going to want less human involvement on that sales cycle. You're going to want your agents, multiple, plural AI agents, to be always looking for solutions that are just in time for you. And you're going to want that source back to you automatically without your involvement. You want heads up, or you want a report that says, hey, Jimmy, I know this is something we're moving towards with the business based on all the other internal data I have. Here's a possible solution. Now, on the other side, it's my agent, my B2B, my company's widget problem to figure out how to make sure that that information is accurate and highly personalized to you on your side. I believe the humans only really start coming in the future way down the funnel. So I'll stop there because I've just been talking, I know, just out loud. This is where my brain is on this. I think about this like nonstop, my room right now. I'm always thinking about like my ancient Rome. This is what is going to happen in sales and how does it impact both sides with AI, with all the technologies, the ARs and everything else that we know are coming. Okay. I'll stop there. Who wants to jump in on any of what I just said as I just verbally brain dumped
Right.
a little bit on
the
the show?
the example that you gave is closer to my ideal than pretty much anything that's done today, right? And so highlighting, I think the highlight fact for me is that it's um, my agent. I want my agent to sift through any form of advertising, marketing, and sales pitch, right? I don't want to deal with any of that. I give it a list of parameters to keep an eye out for, and then it compiles that and brings it to me for final assessment. Because I don't want, like like you were saying about Andy, I don't want to be blasted with ads, or even if they're hyper personalized to me, I don't want to see them. That has been a necessity of commerce in the last few decades, and I don't want to go down that path. I do like the idea of having the up to date current information available, and that can be accessed at the right time. Now, I'm most likely, in this scenario, I'm most likely going to be the one who knows what the right time is, and that's when I'll need to access that information. So I guess that's that fine balance of how do we let everybody know that we have this thing in a way that isn't oppressive or obtrusive, or anything like that. It's not an invasion, so that their experience with our process is as smooth as possible, right? It's easy to find, easy to understand, and easy to buy. So I think that example that you gave is probably the closest down that path that I'm imagining. I mean, in an ideal world, it would be magic, right?
Right.
You don't. It's completely hands off. You don't need to know anything about me. I don't need to know anything about you. But this thing is here when I need it, even though I didn't know I needed it. But
Yeah, that's that. It's the modern version of the 3 a.m. QVC when you can't sleep, right? Like, oh my God, I don't know how I was living without this Swiffer. Like this thing is going to take care of all my floors. This
Yeah.
is a must-have.
So
Go ahead.
I want to jump in and just stick with the B2B example,
Sure.
because when I think of sales as distinct from marketing, I think sales is a function inside companies where they're trying to sell a product to another company. I don't think of sales as inside one company being a department that works to sell to consumers, for example. That I make that separation because if I think about the major, sort of sales SaaS systems, let's take Salesforce, for example, there's not a lot of users of Salesforce who are doing B2C, right? That's just not the core of what Salesforce was designed to do. They do have, extensions of their platform that address that. So anyway, I'm trying to justify my concentration on B2B, and I'm going to say that as the recipient of numerous sales approaches as the chief operating officer or the CEO of various companies over time, I look for the sales department of the companies that are relevant to my business. I look to them to be decision support for my evaluation of the alternatives. And I often would ask them, the salespeople approaching me, to tell me, importantly, how their solution is distinct and different from all the features and functions of their competition, right? That's the key thing. It's the unique selling proposition that I'm interested in hearing and being advised about, but I'm not interested in having a salesperson kind of try to push me towards choosing their product outside of a decision support framework where I'm really looking for their expertise about their product and how that fits into my deep research on evaluation of the possible opportunities to implement something akin to their product in my system stack or in my business process overall. And I lay that all out because that decision support process doesn't require human salespeople once AI is fully implemented, right? I should be able to do the deep research on all of the available alternatives and all of their important distinctive capabilities. I should be able to do that with my own agent going out and doing the research. I can do that to a large degree with deep research tools today. And I would advise, anyone, even the consumer, to experiment with using deep research to explore all the alternatives, even for a consumer product. What is available out there? In many cases, we are only knowledgeable about or aware of a limited window of things that we've actually stumbled across or have been presented to us in the context of algorithms that identify that we are potentially a potential consumer of that sort of thing in social media or in our navigation through search and so on. Like, look at my search history, and I've been looking for these kinds of things before, so that's going to present an ad for that, and so I become aware of alternatives that way. But I think it's reversing. It's going to be more about the appeal from the consumer, whether that's a business or a consumer. It's going to be the appeal to the consultative sale, but that the intermediary in that consultative sale is going to be my agent, and I don't really need to. I just don't have access to all of your information. I don't really want to have you trying to influence my decision unless it's purely consultative, and I have a really good detector about whether I'm just going through a sales script with somebody or they're actually trying to understand my circumstances and really evaluate it to come to the conclusion that, our solution isn't the best for your particular situation. Why?
Okay.
Because, so there.
No, I just know exactly what you're saying though. But the other side of this, Andy, is you're saying you're right. And Jimmy, you're absolutely right. And Beth, I'd love to get your opinion on this too. Most people are going to say, and we see this through the industry, I'd prefer to talk less to the company. If I have a good website that I can go to and I can self-educate, that's preferable. Beth, you're saying, you're shaking her yes. Most people would say that. We're seeing this in the sales industry, right? More hands-off, more tools for me to do it. But what I want to say, Andy, is you're right. You want your agent to, let's say, source the best version of what fits not only your job, but I say this all the time, your sub industry, your specific role. I don't want to sell to any CXO. I want to sell to Andy Halliday. And what does that mean? Well, there's a lot that I can generate from the website, from the internet. If I know from like LinkedIn and things that I can pull from just you, Andy. Obviously, anything that's been written in blogs and past businesses and things that might just be on the web anyway. Of course, I can bring that into the conversation. But then even deeper than that, I want to understand what somebody like you is going through in your current role for the amount of years you've been there and the size company you are. And we can go about 16 more levels deep here if we wanted to, right? That's that level of personalization. Because what do I want to do as a seller? Well, I do want to bring highly personalized decisions and solutions to you and not anybody else. So here's the thing I was going to say. It will be on the business to figure out how to create, either because they will have agents that do this on the fly, or they will have to build this out more manually at first to ensure that your highly specialized information finds you at the time that you're looking for it. What could that look like in the future? Well, that could mean that as you go to a website and you request more information, you might get back a highly personalized Andy demo that's only made for you and was made in the last 30 seconds. It did not exist and it is not for anybody else. It is only for you. And I think that's the level that we're going to see in the future. And you're right. It's both sides of it. Your ask is, don't waste my time if you can't tell me how your solution does or does not fit my needs at this particular moment better than the alternatives. On my side, from the B2B side or from the business side, is to make sure that that information finds you in a very specific way at the time that you need it the most and surfaces that. And so there's both sides of this. And I think that's where we're looking at, where you are going to have agents talking to agents that you and I, me being the seller, you being the potential buyer, are not actually even aware of until a certain level, till a threshold is met that says this is when a meeting needs to happen. But you're going to come in informed. I'm going to come at you informed. And we're going to skip all of the pleasantries. And we're going to be able to just get to the brass tacks of, you have all that information, Andy, in your deep research. I know exactly, or I feel like I know exactly. Now let's talk about this highly specialized thing. So anyway, Beth, what's your thoughts on this as sort of talking about the future of sales here?
So part of what I'm experiencing as someone being sold to and thinking about in this context is that we are in an environment where ad content, right? Something that is personalized to me based on my search history or other information that is hanging out in my browser. So it can come from anywhere that I'm engaging with, um, is generated not for value, but for attention. So the messaging in this needs to like go in the total opposite direction. And for me, that's human. Like part of what I see happening as we move towards the future in this is more and more of the internet is AI generated. And there's some things happening in the US government that make misinformation slightly easier to do without consequences. Um, so I think the environment that this is happening in is degrading, and that's a piece that I'm not sure we've figured out. And I think most people associate that sort of you can't just like all the internet is sounds the same, it's all generated by AI, all of those sorts of things. I think those people are starting to get turned off from the personalized message, right? To a certain extent, it would be better for me if the AI came if the AI used the information about me to send me like an old-fashioned sales message that said, "Hey, I have a reminder on my system to, reach out to you like sometime within the next 6 months. And I'm just curious how you're doing in the context that we talked about last time." Now, your AI may tell you exactly what you need to say to me in that sales conversation,
Mhm.
but
Hopefully.
I don't want to hear that up front.
Really?
I want us to pretend that, in fact, you just put a 6-month timer and a randomizer, and this just happened, and that you're not right, that you don't know that I just got on your website, at midnight last night, or whatever the things are. I think if we can give people an experience, if we can set people up for meaningful human interactions, that's where I think the sales would be. That's what I want. I want people to come to me with that. Less creepy, more like, "Hey, you were on my mind," right?
But okay, so I
Because
have questions about this, Beth, because
intuition is pattern-based, right?
isn't it, by the way, I turned down my mic volume a little bit. I never have to auto adjust it, but somebody in the comments was still saying that my mic was
Come up a little more.
Yeah.
Come up a
Now
little.
you're what Jumi was. Jumi, is, I think, maybe, good now.
I just split them in. Does that sound okay?
Little higher.
Keep coming up.
Kind of where I was, but okay. No sweat. I want to make this okay now.
We're good.
All right. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Greg's like up more. Sorry, guys.
But he's 15
And
seconds
by the way,
delayed.
Beth is the Goldilocks. It's the porridge is just right apparently with Beth's mic. So I don't know why. I've never had to adjust my mic. I'd move my mic away from me. Maybe I'm just animated. I'm talking louder in the room. I'm not sure, but I can always adjust that way too.
Yeah, move it a little closer.
I love that I'm right back where I.
Except now you muted it.
Is it Monday or is it Thursday?
It's a Monday, kind of
It's
Thursday.
my first show of this week, and I am acting like it's Monday on the show. I have had the craziest week, guys. That's neither here nor there. What I was going to ask you, Beth, this is what I was going to get back to. Okay. Jimmy, you and I, Jimmy just went off the That couldn't have been timed better. Okay, Jimmy and Jimmy's gone. Guys, we're gonna get this. We're gonna get this right. We're only 23 minutes into a Thursday show. I promise you, we're gonna figure this out. What I was gonna say is, Jimmy, I was just gonna reference that you and I are on the show, but I've heard you say it a lot. Talk about uncanny valley. But when we say that, we're usually talking about like some sort of avatar or video, and you're like, "Ooh, that's still a little creepy." But what do we usually say? Hey, this is the worst it'll ever be. So, like, if it's a little creepy today, it's going to be less creepy tomorrow. At some point in the future, don't know when, it won't. It will no longer be an uncanny valley issue, and it will no longer be creepy, and it'll just be some digital avatar of any one of the three of y'all, and I won't really be able to tell the difference unless you told me. Be like, I don't know, it could be them. It could be them. I don't see any difference from reality. Okay, I bring that up to go back to your point, Beth, because I understand we're not talking about video per se or avatar, although that is part of the conversation. But what interested me about what you said is like, can't we just go back to the old way? Can't we just pretend that I was a follow-up? But isn't part of this perhaps that we just haven't reached a level and it still feels a little icky to you, perhaps because the AI is is being used to not really get past that sales uncanny valley, for lack of a better term here, and that as that also gets better, it actually does make your experience as the potential buyer better. And so I wonder if I'm just curious, like, is that just your thought because of where we are now, or do you see that perhaps in a year or two or five, whatever it is, that no, actually, you do want them to be able to do at least some of this background because it does make for a better experience for you? And by the way, I say this as I see that people are having a resurgence of things like postcards in the mail, right? Because why? Because sending a postcard through the mail is distinctly not, it's snail mail. It's distinctly not AI. It is a message or whatever. And so I see a lot of businesses who are really starting to push this. And so that also seems to be in line with kind of what you were saying, Beth. But just curious if you could elaborate a little bit, if it's just an AI today problem, or you're like, no, I actually don't really care where AI goes. I still will want this in 5 years.
So this is interesting, and I'm curious to hear from people who are in the chat, but also listening afterwards, um, because this I may be having somewhat of a gendered reaction because um, people try to manipulate women a lot, right?
Mhm.
And so there's a level of like you're like setting off my radar because you think you know me in a
Mm.
way that I don't have an experience of that level of knowledge yet
Mm.
with you. So I'm like, all right, that immediately goes in the box of suspicion.
Mm.
I'm like, now you need to explain, which is why I think if we start with a question, and even if, right, like, I would be more likely to have the conversation, be willing to have the conversation if the AI came to me and said, so I'm interested in, I'm interested in I'm interested in knowing the AI. I'm playing the AI.
Mhm.
I, as the AI, am AI sales, whatever, am interested in knowing more about what's happening for you so that we can personalize this, and then reveals what it knows in an interactive conversation. So our data says that you're very interested. I still get this. You're very interested in elder safety products,
Mhm.
right? And I'm like, no, update your system that my
Right.
mother died in 2016.
Right. Yeah.
So
Once
we're
upon a time,
good.
that was very important to me. Yeah.
That was like,
Not
yep.
today. Yeah.
Something about elders means you have to update your system when they no longer exist as elders, right?
You
Like
would
that's
think
a
that'd be a
thing.
big part of that that market for sure.
Like that kind of stuff. And if that was the sales back and forth, yeah, I'm willing to give you the information that you need to make that with me, but
Mm.
I need you to reveal something that should make me understand that you're uh tr- trusting. Sorry, I'm distracted by by what's happening in the comments now. I am perhaps from a previous time when stuff
Well,
was
no, I think
simpler.
I think you have great. This is great. What your valid points. I'm curious though, like what would okay, I want to reach out to you in an email. My thought would be that if I did take that tactic with you, by the way, everybody's always testing everything in sales. But if I tested out the idea with you of, hey, Beth, I don't want to assume I know you, right? There's got to be that level of respect of like, I'm not coming in with, well, the first word that came to my mouth is I'm not coming in with a mansplaining of what this solution is, because I see what you're saying, as that could be a triggering thing. Um, but what would be the impetus for you to respond to me at all if I asked you about what's going on? Wouldn't that just sound like a sales and be like, I don't want to interact with you? Why are you now asking? Because my thought was, wouldn't that just be like, but now you're asking me to do the legwork? And so, like, I have to take my time and respond to you about something you're coming to me with a potential solution. Shouldn't you do your homework first? So I find it like, how do you navigate that? And obviously AI oversteps a lot. AI helps a lot in sales, and I think that's why this is an interesting conversation. Is like, what is the right level, and is the answer actually, well, the only answer is there's Beth's answer, and there's Andy's, and there's Junmi's, and they are no longer, or do they necessarily need to be bucketed in any way? They are highly specific to you. And
Well,
are we okay with that, by the way? Or does that feel like an invasion of our privacy? Does that feel like an invasion to who we are? If the AI is so good that it feels like it already knows us before we have the problem.
but is that like, is this a gendered thing? do y'all not go, what? No,
I'm
we don't have
suspicious
that
of everybody with
relationship.
sales.
Like,
No, I
that's
mean,
just
I don't,
creepy.
obviously I can't see it from the female perspective, obviously, but yeah, no, I'm suspicious of anybody anyway, because I just think like, well, of course, like marketing by like definition is perhaps manipulation. You're trying to catch me on a, whatever, on a street, and you're trying to say, well, Brian's the target audience, and man, we feel like we can get him. I don't play golf, but it's the first thing that came to my head. Like his golf game could get, whatever, a stroke better or something like that, or his handicap could go down, up. See, I don't play golf. Whatever it is, that's better. Lower handicap, buy these clubs or these shoes with better grip or whatever it is, right? So like I kind of always just feel like that's marketing, that's sales in general, is that of course you're trying to manipulate my emotions. I just don't think people realize how far this is about to go. And people have said Minority Report and other things in the comments. And I like, yeah, that's why I did that graphic for the thumbnail of like the image reversed. So like the person's looking at Joe's Crab Shack or whatever. But I also said when I was going for this show, okay, I'm driving down the street and I look through a billboard through my windshield. That billboard is 100% targeted to me. I'm the only one that can see it. Why? Because my heads-up display that is my windshield is now capable of auto tracking and producing what looks like a real ad on that billboard. If I go outside my window, it's some static ad. If I look inside my window and I'm the driver, it's different. If my wife is in the driving seat, it's different.
And is that because of glasses? You're seeing it through your glasses, or you're seeing it through the section of the windshield?
Let's just
Like,
say it's the windshield.
I
Let's
don't
just
want
say
my
it's got.
windshield to be that
I,
tracking of my eyeballs.
Listen, I'm not suggesting that every car will, and I get what you're saying, but this is where I believe this is
Yes,
going.
I think
If
you
it's
are
not
right.
the billboard, it's the heads-up display. Mark Zuckerberg literally just said like last week or whatever that the future isn't cell phones. What do they think it is? Glasses.
Yeah.
Or some sort of version of AR. They really feel
Yeah,
like it's
so
going to.
you're touching on something that is, I think, marketing more than sales, and that is something that's very interesting and possible in a highly connected, digitally enabled world environment. And what it's doing is adding geospatial and temporal relevance to information presentation.
100%.
So it very highly personalized and customized all the way down to time of day, physical location, proximity calculations to the various things, and then presenting an advertisement or a notification or an alert about the availability of these kinds of things. It goes back to one of your earlier comments about, hey, I happen to be driving down this road. There's this thing that's nearby that, some system is tracking my location and my history and says to me, you might be interested that something that's relevant to things that you've showed interest in before is just a mile off to the right.
Yeah.
That would be useful. I can see that be something that I would actually subscribe to if I wanted to enable it while I was in transit and not perfectly familiar with what's available in the regions that I'm now traversing. So that's really, really highly advanced digital marketing, in my view. So I want to jump back to sales again and just share anecdotally that as the chief operating officer at LifeAid, there are a wide number of companies, both on the sort of the business systems side and in the sales management side, that would want to reach me because I'm a decision maker investing in systems for the company. And I say that I'm really more inclined to be resistant to and or implement countermeasures to sales approaches because many of them are quite smarmy. I have a great example of one recently, but because I continue to get calls. Why? Because the systems aren't sophisticated enough to know that I'm no longer at LifeAid Beverage Company, right?
Yeah.
And so it hasn't been highly personalized to me, but they found my number somewhere in one of those sales exchanges. And so they call me. And I just want to say that I'm not so resistant that I don't try to help the person who's calling. If they actually get through to me, and I typically don't answer telephone numbers that I'm not familiar with, but sometimes I will, and I will try to assist them, with not just the fact that I'm no longer there, but here's some facts that will be helpful in qualifying that particular account for you, whether or not it makes sense for you to even approach them. I'm not going to give you the name of the person that you need to reach. Again, you'll have to do your own research on that. But I really want to be helpful to them. And that was true even when I was in the position. I would try to very quickly establish whether there was really something there for us to talk about. And if not, I'd very politely discourage them from calling me again, because there's just really not much. There's no matchup going to happen on that front. So that's why I'm optimistic about the importance of agentic AI systems being able to interrogate a system that I've already prepared. That's my inbound communications agent, if you will, that I've already prepared as the chief operating officer or the CEO or whatever. I have an intermediary, what replaced my original administrative assistant that I used to have when I was a CEO, right? That they don't exist anymore. Instead, I'm ultimately going to have a personal assistant that's AI driven that you're going to have to interact with before you reach me. But my personal assistant is going to have all of the kinds of helpful ways that I can adjust your intention about approaching this company and through this channel. And that's going to be a very automated process. And then the role of the live human salesperson is going to be when there's already a match. Okay, now let's go on a first date. Let me talk to a live human in your organization who's really knowledgeable about all of the aspects of implementation and integration issues with these other elements of my system stack. I'm going to reveal those, that you might be able to see that through the agent at some level that I am willing to permit public access to. But now I want to talk to a human and go in the live conversation back and forth. And I also believe that there will be an AI imitation of that human that's going to be pretty satisfactory ultimately, that I can talk to personally, that gives me the full experience of actually talking to a knowledgeable senior executive at that company. And that's possible too. But I definitely, as a person who's going to have to trust that company to work with me, I want that to be transparent. I'm going to be very willing to talk to the AI representation of the top level senior expert in this kind of implementation, but I want to know that that's what I'm talking to when I do.
So this is interesting because there's recently been some controversy in like data analysis world about AI being pretty bad about making real sentiment analysis decisions based on recorded customer feedback conversations. And one of the pieces of that is that AI is still like pretty good at the text content, but is in some ways missing the empathy pieces. Like it functions empathically based on pattern, but not based on cue yet. And Andy, if I'm in your scenario and I get really close to like, okay, now I just want to talk to a human and like finalize the thing and have this conversation, I'm expecting the human to have consumed all of the information the way that AI has. And I'm not sure we have a really good handoff, right? Like, I mean, is and so now, Brian, is the glasses or the thing that you're wearing like, okay, ask about the baby, right? Like, and then,
100%.
right? Laugh at this because you know what this means, right? because you don't, right? Like, I mean, that then now we're monkey fingers, monkey puppets again,
Well,
right?
I think you bring up a good point of like even AI is going to infiltrate even the human to human interaction. You're absolutely right. If we get to low zero latency and two people can basically talk two different languages, what's to stop us from being able to feed live information just like they can start to do now with Zoom calls, but doing it live? And now you're right. You have two humans who are talking to each other who aren't really necessarily present as much as they are trying to use the AI to say whatever the next best predictable thing is to get their desired outcome. And by the way, I mean this on both the seller and the buyer side. It goes both ways. Greg was saying that like, we're talking more about the buyer, not so much the seller, not as much as the buyer. But honestly, a lot of this plays in both areas. And Andy, you sort of were saying this, you didn't say it, but one of the other topics I had for this was the idea of digital twins. I think digital twins are going to play a huge role. Right now, it would be considered probably expensive for me to create, let's call it a digital twin of Life Aid. And I don't mean, by the way, like where the pipes go at the HQ for, right? Not that kind of digital twin, but a legit, I set up Andy's Life Aid is one of my prospects. It's in my territory. Let's say I'm the salesperson. I'm responsible for it. And now from my side, I start creating essentially digital twins because let's be honest, as Andy is the COO, I might want to talk to you. I might identify that you're the decision maker, and I'm not a guy who's in sales. I work for a sales consulting agency, but I'm not also the president for the hair club. So like I just work for sales because but obviously I work much more on the AI side of things. But I obviously don't want to just talk to Andy. I want to talk to Beth. I want to talk to Jimmy within Life Aid, right? And so I may now start creating digital twins in the way that we look in a CRM today and we go, oh, well, there's this piece and there's this piece. And oh, Andy's a contact. So let's put 5 lines in about Andy. No, I think the future of a CRM is more like a digital twin that's looking at prospects from 360 degrees and coming up and crafting all sorts of different ways to get into that account, to land, to expand if they're a current client and you're trying to build more business into there, to get more champions. Because what happens if Andy leaves the company and he's the only one that I built up as a champion? I lose the account more than likely because I only had Andy. He was the only one that believed in what we were doing. So that's certainly not going to be okay from a lot of sales perspective. Anyway, I think this goes much bigger and farther. And so really the question today is like, what does the next couple of years look like to you guys as sales? We know what's there. We know what's coming with heads up displays. We know what can be done with data that's currently available. We've all had the experience on our phone where we feel like the phone is listening to us because then we see an ad that presumably the last thing we remember is that we had a conversation openly in a house or something about that topic, and then it shows up on our phone. There's just 2 ways to think about that. There's a conspiracy theory of your phone is actually listening to you and producing ads, or it's, I think, what is the more likely scenario, which is that we don't realize just quite how much we project our needs, desires, wants in a very nonverbal, non-communicative way, but it's out there. And AI is only going to make it easier to pick up on those cues. And I like to know we all think like we're a special snowflake, but we're not. We're unique to ourselves. But the reality is we're very similar. We're on an island. We're in a tribe of people who need similar things, whether it's elder care, whether it's something about horses, whether it's about, video producing, right? And so we belong in these tribes. And I think it's going to get easier and easier for people to be delivered ads, and they're going to go, where did you get my data? I feel like it's an invasion of privacy. And I think the real answer is just going to be like, no, the AI has gotten much better at figuring out what you need before you came up with that idea yourself. And that's going to feel like live tapping,
Brian, we have this great opportunity, an AI competent, knowledgeable executive at a sales consulting company. So I want you to, if you can, share with us where you think AI has actually moved the needle for customers in a big way? Like
Hmm.
what, give us the use cases where it's really making a substantial difference in the sales prospecting to opportunity to
Yeah.
account development process.
Oh my God. Like so many areas. Okay. So if we start from the prospecting and messaging, now what would have taken 45 minutes, and it's always a silly thing to say this because the reality is SDRs, AEs weren't doing this work. They were too busy. And so the idea of doing deep research on a company or a person wasn't really happening. But we often say, we've talked to many people through scale, obviously thousands upon thousands of different reps and things like that. And they would often say this is a 45 minutes to hour long process from the prospecting messaging side for personalization. Now that's a 3-minute process. Now you could almost do it live, even if you thought you were going to get on a call with somebody. Classic example. I think I'm getting on with just you on this call. And then I realized 10 minutes out from the call that your CFO is also joining the call. That changes things. Your CFO is going to have different questions than you. And so not only do I need to be prepared for what a COO might care about, but I now also need to understand the financials of what a CFO is going to care about, which is rightfully so different than you, right? So those kind of things. So the speed to personalization and preparedness from prospecting. Now, on the buyer side, yes, there's also been improvements there as well. Obviously, I work on the seller side more than the buyer side. But what I do believe is that not all sales is icky, right? Sometimes it's literally the really good ones are out there genuinely trying to come up with solutions. I feel that getting sales teams that can do higher orders of personalization is actually good for the sales team. I don't feel like I'm trying to trick them. I actually legit think it's a good thing for them, right? So from that perspective, hopefully from the seller side, they are getting the targeted information that's more valuable to them. Now, as you go farther in this, let's go beyond just the prospecting. Let's go to discovery call prep. Let's go to demo call prep. Let's go to role playing with reps who now don't have to rely on a manager to do live role playing anymore. They can actually set it up, and we've built custom role-playing GPTs that do exactly that. They know everything about your business. They know everything about the target persona you're going after, and they can mimic what that person is perhaps going to say, so you can be more prepared on a call for it. So it's directly affecting onboarding for new reps. Typically, it takes 90 days. We're now seeing new reps being able to be onboarded in less than 30. Then you get into the areas like Beth was saying, where you have the live information that new tools are coming out that's like bringing that up on a call. But where we're going with that, Andy, is if I lean back and I look off screen, we're now seeing tools that can look at my facial expressions and decide whether they think I'm now disconnecting from the conversation. I've talked too long. I'm blabbing on for this problem, and Andy, the CEO, doesn't care about that. I need to recorrect what I'm saying because he looks disinterested now. Then you get into proposals, SOWs, RFPs. Think about all the time into RFPs alone, that how long it takes to put together a well-organized RFP. It's hours in the old ways. AI can help with that. It can help with SOWs and proposals. It can quickly go and look and say, given that you've worked with X amount of these companies, like at scale, what we'll do is we'll say like, well, you've worked with these X amount of other companies. Those are very similar to this new SOW. Hey, with AI, I can go pull immediately from that resource that well and generate a new SOW that will speak directly to this new prospective client because it's about their types of business. I could go on and on. Those are just some of the areas that are being directly impacted. And what it really means is less time worked on busy work and more time for human to human connections. So what we're really saying is what AI should be helping with is more time for me to have conversations with you one-on-one, because I don't have to spend all the time to do all the busy work. So what I hope it means is more sales reps actually travel more, actually walk in the front door of businesses, actually say, hey, do you have 5 minutes? I think I have something that can be really valuable to you. I think that's honestly what we're going to see is a return to the conferences, the one-on-one connections, because that's where the actual sales is going to happen. All the other stuff will be handled by AI.
Yeah, good. Thanks. That was really that was a masterclass. Thank you. In the state of the art of AI in sales. I wanted to make a tangential point, which is that there's two kinds of sales approaches from the buyer's side that I've experienced. And one of them is the person who their job is just to try to get me to take a call with a salesperson.
Correct.
Okay. So that's the first entree. And then there's the call with the salesperson. And the salesperson is, charged with, developing this much revenue. They're very revenue focused, and they're not necessarily the most technically adept with their own product, which
Correct.
would be a third type of sales
That's the demo.
engagement,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
the sales engineer. Okay. So I really want to skip the first two and get to the sales engineer and really dig in quickly with somebody who's a technical expert in the solution that you're providing, who can really kind of help me understand whether there are some blocking structural impediments to our actually using that product in an effective way in our business processes. And then there's another one that you described, which AI is helping to prepare for, which is the big sales call where there's lots of executives on it, from the company that's the potential purchaser. And there's also, all representations of all of those that I previously described. They're all on the same call. And how do you orchestrate that whole thing as the person responsible for managing that? That's the prospective account owner who's going to be owning that account. That person's responsible for building that meeting and its agenda and controlling it in real time. I'm a little unnerved by the idea that I'm going to be evaluated by an AI, and that person is going to be seeing on the Zoom or Meet or Teams meeting or whatever it is that we're on. I'm a little unnerved that I'm going to be evaluated in terms of my facial expressions, because I'm a pretty scowly guy to start with, and I don't want them to be, paying too much attention to that. I'd rather they stick to the subject. But anyway, I wanted to lay that kind of out because I'm imagining now, as I understand better where the tools are being applied, how it would influence the experience I have in various stages of the sales approach in a B2B sales context.
And don't forget, Andy, now the best. So like going back to the buyer side of it, you now have more control, right? We've said this, it goes on both sides. It's not just seller AI, it's buyer AI. So think about this. Maybe there's companies doing this right now. I don't know. And they only hold showcases. Let's say you're the CEO, COO, and you're like, biannual, we have a set date. You feel like you have a solution. I'm going to provide this information about LifeAid to get you started. Sure, it's your job to do the due diligence everywhere else. You be the seller. And then, hey, somebody calls you, you say, hey, I appreciate the call. This is the only time we actually do this. We have like sort of a biannual event. You show up, you tell me exactly how you think you can get to that demo stage, which is you're talking about with the engineer. That's highly specific. I want to skip the first two steps, show up with this. And then we'll evaluate, and then we'll decide whether there's something we want to do or not. So anyway, that's just one idea, but I do think there's a bit of this. I do think there's more power going back to the buyer to be able to sort of control and dictate how and when this information is brought to them. And they may decide to compartmentalize that in all sorts of different ways. You have to show up. You have to show up on site. Your company has to bring somebody to this LifeAid headquarters, and you have to present in person. It's the only way we will do business with you. Either you're willing to send somebody live and come with this information, or we won't be talking about your solution. That's what we got for you, right? You could. And I think that is also some things here. So look, there's been a lot here. And I feel like this is one of those conversations. Greg was saying it too. Like, I think we could talk for hours. I could talk for hours on this. It's sort of like education for me. I just find it endlessly fascinating. And oftentimes I still don't think I'm even grasping 30% of what this is actually going to look like in the next couple of years. What I am sure of is that there's going to be some massive adjustments and changes. And by the way, I don't necessarily means mass layoffs for sales reps and things like that. I think it means a shift perhaps back to that personalization and that one-on-one and that human-to-human contact. I do think that is inevitable, but I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that AI will wipe out sales or merge sales and marketing. Like anything, I think it provides us more access, more tools on both sides of it. And ultimately, that is going to shape what the future of both the buyer and the seller experience is. As we wrap up, anything from you guys? Last thoughts on this?
I think what's important is to understand who we are, because the minute Andy started talking about the sales engineer, all of us went, yes, don't give me the sales agent who doesn't know the answer to the questions, right? Like, we want to speak with the person, like, no. So I like, if AI can make that easier, I'll take your creepy information.
Yeah, by the way, there's the sales engineer, and then there's the engineer that they never let speak to the customers, right?
Well,
And
yeah.
that's the guy who really knows
Yeah.
how the thing works. Yeah.
And that's who I want to talk to, because like, we start having those conversations about, like, hey, what is the process of this? Like, is there a general import process? Is that, and the salesperson they never let do it is like, no, that doesn't, we don't have that. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Right.
I
Fourth
often
sale.
find myself in conversations where I go, no, don't say that. So I wouldn't call myself an engineer, but I have often been in conversations and where I've maybe talked to maybe a coworker, and I say, no. Like, don't say that. That's not. Usually, it has something to do with agents. I'm going to be honest with you, but that goes into a whole bunch of other areas too. Sessic just had a really good LinkedIn post about pre-training and training LLMs, and he was talking similar to that, just getting clear on what that actually means when a business actually asks that. And Jimmy or Beth, I was just going to say, it reminds me of the SNL skits from old days with Jimmy Fallon, I think was the main guy, where he fixes the computers and he's just like, move. he fixes it, and he's really rude about it. But that's kind of like, that's that engineer that they don't want on the call. He or she definitely knows what they're doing, but they don't necessarily have the gravitas to be on a call with a client or potential client or whatever. Okay, tomorrow is our bi-weekly recap show, which means that we have an opportunity to continue this conversation if there's anything we didn't get to today, but it also means an ability to go back over the last 2 weeks and bring up any of the conversations from last 2 weeks, of which there have been tons. We did a lot of shows last week, always 5, but we did a lot on major topics, like 4 major topics last week, 3 major topics this week, plus our 2 news shows. So there's a ton for us to go back on. And I feel like the news cycle right now is just humming along. So I know you guys had the news yesterday. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I just saw this morning that Claude's coming out with new models and so on and so forth. So tons to talk about, and we'll have an opportunity to go over all of that tomorrow. Thanks for hanging out with us today, everybody. Thanks for dealing with our mic issues and freezing issues right off the bat and everything else. But hey, it's a live show, and we don't try to hide that. We just have fun with it because, what are you going to do? It's not always going to work out exactly like we want. So thanks for hanging out. Thanks for all the great comments about sales. We will definitely come back to this conversation again. And until tomorrow, we will see you guys. Don't forget, you can go to the Daily AI Show for our newsletter, or the Daily AI Show community, dailyaishowcommunity.com. If you want to sign up and be part of our Slack community, it's a great way on both occasions to keep the conversation going. Until tomorrow, guys, have a great one.